July 29, 1944. Berlin, Reich Security, Main Office. The decoded message sits on Colonel Georg Hansen's desk, marked ALARICH, Most Urgent. The head of German military intelligence reads the words from their most valuable agent in England, the spy codenamed ALARICH, known to the British by a different designation, Arabelle. Hansen's hand reaches for the telephone to connect him directly to Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel at Wehrmacht High Command. The message arrived at 2:47 a.m., too late to stop what had already begun 6 weeks earlier on the beaches of Normandy, but not too late to redeem German strategic planning. ALARICH's network of 27 sub-agents across Britain had finally assembled the complete picture. The invasion of Normandy was a diversion. The real Allied assault would strike at Pas-de-Calais within days, led by General Patton's 1st US Army Group, a force of 50 divisions, 1.5 million men currently holding position across southeast England. Hansen reads the supporting intelligence aloud to Keitel. Agent J3, the senior official in the British Ministry of Information, confirmed Allied deception protocols regarding Normandy. Agent 4-3, working in the Royal Air Force, reported continued heavy bomber concentration targeting Pas-de-Calais fortifications. Agent 7-4, a seaman in the Merchant Navy, observed massive convoy assembly in Dover. Agent 7-7, employed at Hiltingbury Military Camp, watched the US 28th Infantry Division conduct embarkation exercises. The evidence was overwhelming, comprehensive, impossible to fabricate. 27 agents, operating independently across Britain, all reporting intelligence that converged on a single conclusion. Germany must hold the 15th Army at Pas-de-Calais. The Normandy landings were exactly what ALARICH said they were, an elaborate feint. Keitel issues immediate orders. The 15th Army, 19 divisions strong, remains in position. Additional panzer divisions are redirected north, away from Normandy. The decision aligns with Hitler's own strategic assessment. The Führer had insisted for months that Pas-de-Calais was the logical target, the shortest route to Germany, the most defensible beachhead, the obvious choice for competent Allied commanders. ALARICH's intelligence network had confirmed what German strategic doctrine already believed. Hansen drafts the response to ALARICH to be transmitted through the Abwehr station in Madrid. Message received. Führer concurs with your assessment. 15th Army holds position. Your intelligence has been decisive for the defense of the Reich. Recommend immediate award of Iron Cross First Class. What Hansen could not know, what no one in German intelligence would discover until after the war, was that every word in ALARICH's 1,500-page intelligence file was fiction. There were no 27 agents, there was no network, there was no Agent J, 3 in the Ministry of Information, no Agent 4, 3 in the RAF, no Agent 7-4 or 7-7, or any of the others. The entire apparatus was the creation of a single Spanish chicken farmer named Juan Pujol García, operating from a semi-detached house in suburban London, under British control. Germany's most trusted spy was Britain's most successful double agent, known to MY5 by his British codename, GARBO. And the intelligence that Germany found so convincing, the network they trusted so completely, the agent they would award the Iron Cross, was the most elaborate deception operation in military history. The story begins not with British intelligence recruiting a master spy, but with a Spanish chicken farmer who nobody wanted. Juan Pujol García was born February 14, 1912, in Barcelona, to a middle-class Catalan family. He studied commerce, worked briefly in his father's textile business, managed a cinema, raised chickens. Nothing in his background suggested aptitude for intelligence work. He spoke mediocre English, had no military training, possessed no technical skills valuable to espionage. During the Spanish Civil War, he served both sides at different times, deserting from Republican forces to join the Nationalists, then abandoning that cause as well. The experience left him with deep contempt for totalitarianism in all forms, fascist and communist alike. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, Garcia decided to act. His plan was simple: offer his services to Germany, gain their trust, then use his position to feed them false information that would help the Allies. The British rejected him 3 times. In January 1941, Garcia approached the British embassy in Madrid, offering to spy on Germany. The embassy officer dismissed him without taking notes. In February, he tried again, providing more detail about his planned approach to German intelligence. Again refused. The British had procedures for recruiting agents, background checks, verification protocols. Random Spanish civilians walking into embassies did not fit the profile. Garcia tried the Americans next, with identical results. The US military attaché in Lisbon listened politely, thanked him, sent him away. Garcia's solution demonstrated either remarkable determination or profound delusion. He would spy for Germany first, establish his credentials, then approach the British with proven value. On January 28, 1941, he entered the German embassy in Madrid and met with Oberst Friedrich Knappe-Rathe of the Abwehr, German military intelligence. Garcia introduced himself as a Spanish government official with fascist sympathies, access to diplomatic pouches, and willingness to spy for the Reich. He presented forged Spanish Foreign Ministry credentials and letters of introduction. Knappe-Rathe was interested but cautious. The Abwehr had been burned by false agents before. He instructed Garcia to relocate to Lisbon, Portugal, a neutral city with better access to Allied shipping traffic, and report on British convoy movements through Portuguese ports. Garcia faced an immediate problem. He had no intention of actually going to Lisbon. He needed the Germans to believe he was conducting espionage, but he also needed to maintain contact with his wife in Madrid and avoid becoming an actual German agent. His solution was to create an entirely fictional spy operation from his apartment in Lisbon, except he never went to Lisbon. He stayed in Madrid, purchased a blue guide to England, a map of Britain, and a Portuguese railway timetable. He studied these materials intensively for 3 weeks. Then, he began writing intelligence reports about British activities he claimed to observe in London. He had never been to England. He was sitting in Madrid, inventing everything. The early reports were disasters. Garcia had never seen Britain, did not understand British geography, misread his reference materials consistently. In his first major intelligence report, submitted March 1941, he described watching convoys depart from Liverpool docks that did not exist, sailing routes that were geographically impossible, and British units stationed at locations where no military installations were located. He reported that Glaswegians would do anything for a litre of wine, unaware that Scotland measures alcohol in pints and whiskey is the preferred drink. He described British soldiers in Glasgow drinking pints of wine in public. Any competent analyst should have recognised the reports as fraudulent. The Abwehr believed him completely. His reports were forwarded to Berlin, analysed, filed, and used for operational planning. The German intelligence apparatus was suffering from institutional dysfunction that made Garcia's deception possible. The Abwehr was engaged in bureaucratic warfare with the SD, Himmler's intelligence service. Both organizations competed for resources, access to Hitler, and credit for intelligence coups. This competition incentivized accepting dubious intelligence if it might embarrass rivals or gain favor with leadership. Additionally, the Abwehr's operations in Britain had collapsed. Between September 1939 and mid-1941, British counterintelligence had captured or turned every German agent operating in the United Kingdom. The Abwehr desperately needed sources in Britain. Garcia's reports, however flawed, were the only intelligence stream they possessed from inside England. By July 1941, the Germans had given Garcia the codename ALARICH and were paying him $600 monthly, transmitted through a cover address in Lisbon. Garcia was still in Madrid, inventing intelligence from guidebooks, spending German money on his family, and trying to contact British intelligence with proof of his value. The British still refused to meet him. The relationship changed because of invisible ink and bureaucratic procedure. Garcia's letters to his German handlers used invisible ink for the intelligence content, written between the lines of innocuous cover letters about business matters. British postal censorship in Lisbon intercepted these letters routinely. By December 1941, analysts had noted that someone was sending large volumes of secret writing to known German accommodation addresses. The content suggested an agent operating in Britain. MI5, British counterintelligence, assumed they had missed an enemy spy and began intensive investigation to identify which of their double agents had been compromised or which German operative had evaded detection. The investigation found nothing because there was nothing to find. No agent in Britain was sending these reports. The intelligence was fabricated, but the search brought the letters to the attention of MI5's Iberian section, which recognized the writing style from previous recruitment attempts by a Spanish civilian the British had rejected. On February 19, 1942, British intelligence officer Jean Risso-Gill met Garcia in Lisbon. Garcia produced his entire correspondence file with the Germans, 47 letters containing detailed intelligence reports, German responses, payment records, and instructions. Risso-Gill recognized immediately what Garcia had accomplished. A Spanish amateur, with no training and no British support, had convinced German intelligence that he was a productive agent in London. The British now faced a choice: arrest him as an illegal operator, or turn his relationship with Germany into the foundation for a controlled deception operation. MI5 chose deception. On April 24, 1942, Juan Pujol García arrived in England for the first time, accompanied by his wife Araceli and young son. He moved into a safe house in Crespigny Road, Hendon, a middle-class North London neighbourhood of semi-detached houses with small gardens. His MI5 handler, Thomas Harris, lived nearby. Harris was a half-Spanish art dealer, fluent in Spanish, skilled at psychological manipulation, and experienced in double-agent operations. The partnership between Garcia and Harris would produce the most successful deception operation of the Second World War. The operational challenge was immediate and substantial. Garcia had spent 14 months convincing the Germans he was in London, operating freely, recruiting sub-agents, and gathering intelligence. He had invented details about his cover identity. He was supposedly a travelling salesman for a soap company, allowing him to move around Britain without suspicion. He had created 3 fictional sub-agents to explain how he gathered information from multiple locations simultaneously. Now that he was actually in London, every future report had to remain consistent with 14 months of fictional history, while also being accurate enough that German intelligence would trust him with operationally significant deception tasks. Harris and Garcia solved this through systematic expansion of the fictional network. They reviewed every report Garcia had sent from Madrid, catalogued every claim he had made, identified every sub-agent he had mentioned. Then they built detailed biographies for each fictional character. Agent 1 was a Portuguese travelling salesman living in Newport, South Wales, recruited because of his commercial travel throughout southwestern England. Agent 2 was a former German-Swiss businessman living in Bootle, near Liverpool, willing to provide intelligence because of his pro-Nazi sympathies and business losses due to British trade policy. Agent 3 was a Venezuelan student in Glasgow, recruited because he needed money and held leftist political views that made him hostile to British capitalism. Each fictional agent required consistent characterization across hundreds of letters. Agent 2 was cautious, methodical, reluctant to take risks, focused primarily on naval intelligence from Liverpool docks. Agent 3 was enthusiastic, politically radical, careless about security, frequently providing information the Germans found valuable, but presented in ways that suggested he did not understand its military significance. Agent 1 was reliable but limited in access, primarily reporting on US military units training in southwestern England. Garcia and Harris wrote every report in character, maintaining distinct writing styles, political perspectives, and levels of intelligence tradecraft for each fictional personality. The network expanded according to German requirements. By late 1942, Garcia was managing 7 distinct fictional sub-agents, each with their own recruitment story, motivation, capabilities, and limitations. Agent 4 was a Gibraltarian waiter working in Soho who could observe American officers drinking at his restaurant. Agent 5 was a brother of Agent 3, living in Canada, later relocated to the United States. Agent 6 was a South African military deserter hiding in Britain, violently anti-British, willing to spy for money. Agent 7 was a Welsh ex-seaman named William Gerbers, recruited by Agent 2, who proved so valuable that he eventually recruited 3 additional sub-agents of his own. This hierarchical structure was operationally essential. Garcia could not personally gather intelligence from Glasgow, Liverpool, Dover, Southampton, and southeastern England simultaneously, while also maintaining his cover as a travelling salesman. The sub-agents explained how intelligence originated from multiple locations. The hierarchy also created operational security justifications for information gaps. When the Germans asked why Agent 3 could not obtain specific information about shipyards in Glasgow, Garcia explained that Agent 3 had limited access to certain facilities, or that his inquiries might compromise security, or that he was temporarily unavailable due to work obligations. The fictional network created realistic constraints that made the intelligence more credible. German intelligence accepted this structure enthusiastically. The Abwehr's operational doctrine emphasized recruiting agent networks rather than relying on single sources. A primary agent who recruited multiple sub-agents demonstrated initiative, tradecraft skill, and provided redundant confirmation for significant intelligence. When multiple agents reported similar information from different locations, German analysts concluded the intelligence was verified. Garcia and Harris could now plant deceptive information, have it confirmed by multiple fictional sources, and watch German intelligence accept it as established fact. The physical production of this deception required extraordinary attention to detail. Garcia composed every letter by hand, in Spanish, writing invisible ink messages between the lines of innocuous cover letters about soap sales, family matters, or political commentary. The invisible ink formulas matched what the Germans had provided in their training. Harris photographed each letter before dispatch to maintain operational records. The letters went through multiple review cycles. MI5's technical staff verified that security markings were correct, that paper types matched what would be available in London, that postage and mailing dates were consistent with claimed activities. The letters were then transported to Lisbon through British intelligence channels and posted from Portuguese addresses that Garcia had established before leaving Spain. The Germans responded to every letter. Their replies came through accommodation addresses in Lisbon, written in secret ink, containing instructions, requests for specific intelligence, payments, and operational guidance. MI5 intercepted these replies through postal censorship, processed them, and delivered them to Garcia. He and Harris would analyze German requests, determine what information to provide, fabricate appropriate intelligence that served British strategic objectives, and compose responses in character for the appropriate fictional agent. A single German request might generate responses from 3 different sub-agents over several weeks, each providing partial information that collectively answered the German question, while also inserting deceptive material that served British interests. The volume of correspondence was staggering. Between April 1942 and May 1945, Garcia sent 315 letters to his German handlers containing more than 1,500 pages of intelligence reports. The Germans sent 115 replies. Every letter required composition, review, photography, secure transit to Lisbon, and posting from Portuguese cover addresses. Garcia was generating more intelligence material than most actual agent networks produced. The Germans never questioned the volume. They interpreted productivity as proof of value. The financial dimension reinforced German confidence. The Abwehr paid Garcia $340,000 between 1942 and 1945. Transmitted through a complex series of financial transactions involving bank drafts, currency exchanges, and numbered accounts. Garcia had to account for these payments in his letters, explaining what he did with the money, how he paid his subagents, why he needed additional funds for network expansion. Harris and Garcia created detailed financial records showing how money was distributed. Agent 2 received £50 monthly. Agent 3 got £30. Agent 4 received £20. Various expenses for travel, equipment, safe house rentals. The accounting had to be consistent across years of correspondence. The Germans audited these expenses, verified that payments matched operational requirements, and approved additional funding when Garcia requested network expansion. This financial element was operationally crucial for one reason. The Germans had to believe Garcia needed the money. If he was working for the British, why would he accept German payment? The financial motivation authenticated his allegiance. Garcia and Harris solved this carefully. The letters showed Garcia as politically motivated, but also greedy. A man who believed in fascist ideology, but also enjoyed the lavish lifestyle German money provided. His letters complained about the cost of living in wartime London, requested bonuses for exceptional intelligence, negotiated higher rates for particularly valuable subagents. This mercenary dimension made him psychologically credible to German intelligence officers, who understood that most spies worked primarily for money rather than ideology. By January 1943, the GARBO network was fully operational and producing intelligence that German planning staffs used for strategic assessment. The Abwehr considered ALARICH their most valuable source in Britain. But MI5 had not yet employed the network for major strategic deception. That changed with Operation Fortitude, the elaborate plan to deceive Germany about Allied invasion timing and location for the cross-channel attack on Nazi-occupied Europe. Fortitude was the largest deception operation in military history. The goal was to convince Germany that the Allied invasion would strike at Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy, would occur later than June 1944, and would involve forces substantially larger than actually existed. The operation required coordinating physical deception, dummy tanks, inflatable landing craft, false radio traffic, with intelligence deception through double agents. GARBO became the centerpiece of the intelligence component. The deception plan required establishing several fictional realities in German intelligence assessments. First, that a massive American force called 1st U.S. Army Group, commanded by General George Patton, was assembling in southeastern England. Second, that this force comprised 50 divisions, approximately 1.5 million men, waiting to invade Pas-de-Calais. Third, that the invasion visible in Normandy was a diversionary attack designed to draw German reserves away from the real objective. Fourth, that after Normandy succeeded in pulling German forces westward, Patton's force would strike at Pas-de-Calais against weakened defences. None of this was true. 1st U.S. Army Group did not exist. Patton commanded 3rd Army, which was not in southeastern England. The Normandy invasion was the real attack. No second invasion was planned. But convincing Germany required more than double agent reports. It required physical evidence that seemed to confirm what the agents reported. Allied deception planners created that physical evidence through Operation Quicksilver, a massive program of visual deception. They positioned dummy tanks, inflatable vehicles, plywood aircraft, and false landing craft across southeastern England. They generated enormous volumes of radio traffic, simulating communications between units of 1st U.S. Army Group. they allowed German reconnaissance aircraft to photograph these installations. They staged inspection tours, where actors portraying Eisenhower and Montgomery visited these fake units. Patton himself was assigned to command the fictional army group, making public appearances in southeastern England, allowing German intelligence to track his location through visual sightings and signals intelligence. Garcia's role was to explain what this physical evidence meant. His fictional agents would observe elements of this fake army, report unit insignia, describe training exercises, note embarkation preparations, and provide the intelligence context that transformed physical deception into strategic assessment. But the reports had to be carefully calibrated. If Garcia simply announced that 1st US Army Group was preparing to invade Pas-de-Calais, German intelligence might suspect deception. Instead, the intelligence had to emerge gradually through multiple sources, appear to be gathered incidentally during routine observation, and require German analysts to assemble fragments into conclusions they believed they had reached independently. The operation began with network expansion. Garcia informed the Germans that he was recruiting additional sub-agents to improve coverage across southeastern England, the region where troop concentrations were heaviest. These new agents had plausible access to militarily significant information. Agent 7-2 was a seaman working in Dover Harbour who could observe convoy assembly and embarkation preparations. Agent 7-4 was a guard at Hiltingbury military camp near Southampton who could report unit movements through the facility. Agent 7-7 was another guard, stationed at a different installation, providing redundant confirmation. Agent 4-1 was the American sergeant based in southern England, recruited by Agent 4 through personal relationships, willing to provide information while drunk. Each fictional sub-agent had recruitment stories, personal backgrounds, motivations, and limitations. Agent 4-1, the American sergeant, was homosexual and had been sexually compromised by Agent 4, who used blackmail to force his cooperation. This detail was operationally significant because it explained why an American soldier would commit treason, and also why he had to be handled carefully. Excessive pressure might cause him to confess to American authorities. The personal details made each fictional character psychologically real to German intelligence officers reading the reports. The intelligence began flowing in March 1944. Agent 7-2 reported observing landing craft assembly in Dover. Agent 7-4 described units of the US 28th Infantry Division conducting embarkation training. Agent 7 confirmed similar preparations at his installation. Agent 4-1 mentioned, during a drunken conversation transcribed by Agent 4, that his unit was part of 1st US Army Group, a new formation that everyone knew was being assembled for the main invasion. The intelligence was fragmentary, required interpretation, and seemed to emerge naturally from agents performing routine observation. German intelligence assembled these fragments exactly as British deception planners intended. Analysis sections in Berlin began constructing order of battle assessments showing 1st US Army Group, comprising multiple corps, numerous divisions, positioned across southeastern England. The assessments seemed to confirm what physical reconnaissance showed. Massive force concentration in Kent, Sussex, and Essex, all positioned for short crossing to Pas-de-Calais. German strategic planning adjusted accordingly. Pas-de-Calais was the obvious target, the most defensible objective, the shortest route to Germany. Hitler's strategic instinct had insisted on this for months. Now, intelligence confirmed it. But the Germans needed more than troop sightings. They needed to know timing. When would the invasion occur? This question was operationally critical because German forces could not maintain maximum alert indefinitely. Units at full readiness consumed supplies, exhausted personnel, degraded equipment. If the Allies delayed invasion for weeks or months, German readiness would decline naturally. The deception required indicating invasion was imminent without specifying exact dates, maintaining German alert status at maximum, while actual Allied forces completed preparation in southwestern England. Garcia solved this through calculated near misses. His letters in May 1944 reported increased activity, units moving to embarkation areas, landing craft being loaded, officers conducting final briefings. The intelligence suggested invasion within days. German forces went to maximum alert. Then nothing happened. Garcia explained the delay through plausible operational reasons. Weather conditions were unfavorable. Rehearsals had revealed coordination problems. Montgomery had demanded additional preparation. The Germans remained alert. The actual invasion was coming, but Garcia's network was reporting preparations for the fictional Pas-de-Calais operation, not the real Normandy attack. June 5, 1944, presented the critical test. The actual invasion of Normandy was scheduled for dawn, June 6th. Allied forces were already embarked, crossing the Channel during darkness, preparing to assault the beaches at first light. Garcia knew the invasion was coming because British intelligence had briefed him. His task was to report it to the Germans in a way that reinforced the deception rather than compromised it. The solution was brilliant and psychologically sophisticated. At 8 p.m. on June 5th, Garcia composed an urgent message to his German handlers. The message reported that Agent 7-2, the seaman in Dover, had observed massive convoy assembly, embarkation of assault troops, and preparations for imminent departure. The message was marked urgent, immediate operational significance. Garcia requested immediate radio transmission rather than waiting for secure letter post. The message clearly indicated that a major invasion was launching within hours. Garcia sent this message to his British handlers with specific instructions. Transmit it to Madrid at 3 a.m., June 6th, 3 hours before the first troops hit the beaches, early enough that German command could potentially respond, late enough that any response would be ineffective. MI5's radio operators transmitted the message precisely at 3 a.m. London time. The message arrived at the Abwehr station in Madrid at 4 a.m. Spanish time, 3 a.m. German time. The Spanish radio operator on duty logged the message and went to wake his supervisor. The supervisor read the message, recognized its significance, and attempted to contact Berlin. The German receiving station was unmanned. It was 3 a.m. The skeleton crew on duty did not include anyone monitoring the Madrid radio link. The message sat in the Madrid transmission log until 7 a.m. German time, when day staff arrived, read the backlog, and forwarded the message to Berlin. By then, Allied troops had been fighting on Normandy beaches for 3 hours. The invasion was irreversible. Garcia's warning had arrived too late to affect German response. But the attempt to provide warning, the 3 a.m. transmission, the urgent marking, the operational detail, demonstrated that ALARICH had tried to alert German command in time to stop the invasion. The failure was not his fault. It was German communication procedures that had failed. Garcia's credibility was enhanced rather than damaged. The reaction in German intelligence was immediate. Colonel Krummacher, intelligence liaison to Wehrmacht High Command, sent a message to the Abwehr station in Madrid on June 7th. Extend to ALARICH our gratitude for his exceptional efforts. His intelligence regarding invasion preparations has been consistently accurate. The delay in receiving his final warning was due to our communications procedures, not his operational security. Request he continue reporting with maximum priority on Allied intentions regarding subsequent operations. Garcia and Harris read this response with satisfaction. The Germans trusted him completely. Now came the decisive deception, convincing Germany that Normandy was a diversion and the real invasion would hit Pas-de-Calais within days. The campaign began immediately. On June 9th, 3 days after D-Day, Garcia sent a lengthy assessment to his German controllers. The message synthesized intelligence from his entire network of 27 agents, each reporting separate observations that collectively suggested a strategic picture. Agent 7 reported that the US 28th Infantry Division, which he had watched training at Hiltingbury Camp for months, was still in position, had not deployed to Normandy. Agent 74 confirmed that embarkation preparations at his installation had paused after initial units departed, but massive forces remained in southeastern England. Agent 41, the compromised American sergeant, reported that officers in his unit were contemptuous of the Normandy operation, referring to it as a diversion and joking that the real show was coming soon at Pas-de-Calais. Agent J3, a senior officer in the British Ministry of Information, whom Garcia had invented for this specific purpose, provided the critical intelligence. He had attended planning meetings where ministry officials discussed deception protocols for covering the Normandy operation to prevent the Germans from realizing it was merely preparatory for the main assault. The synthesis was 2,000 words, meticulously detailed, mathematically precise. Garcia calculated that Allied forces in Normandy comprised approximately 20 divisions. His network had identified 50 divisions in 1st US Army Group. Therefore, 70% of Allied invasion strength remained in England. German intelligence doctrine held that attackers needed 3-to-1 superiority for amphibious assault. The 20 divisions in Normandy were insufficient for decisive operations. The mathematics proved Normandy was a fixing operation, designed to pin German reserves in place while the main force struck elsewhere. And that main force was positioned across from Pas-de-Calais, commanded by Patton, comprising divisions equipped for breakthrough operations rather than the attritional fighting visible in Normandy. Garcia concluded the assessment with a personal observation. After 4 years of intelligence work, after building a network of 27 agents across Britain, after tracking Allied preparations with exceptional detail, he was absolutely certain of Allied intentions. Normandy was a diversion. The real invasion was coming at Pas-de-Calais within 7 to 10 days. He recommended that Wehrmacht High Command hold the 15th Army in position, refuse to commit reserves to Normandy, and prepare to destroy the Allied main force when it landed in the north. This message arrived in Berlin on June 11th. It was shown to Hitler the same day. The Führer read Garcia's assessment and agreed completely. Hitler had been insisting for weeks that Pas-de-Calais was the primary target, that Normandy was too obvious, that Patton would command the real invasion. Garcia's intelligence confirmed Hitler's strategic intuition. On June 12th, Hitler issued orders that the 15th Army, 19 divisions and 250,000 men would remain at Pas-de-Calais. Panzer divisions approaching Normandy were redirected north. The decision was operationally catastrophic. Normandy was the real invasion. Every German division held at Pas-de-Calais was unavailable to contest the beachhead. By the time German command recognized their error, Allied forces had established irreversible superiority in Normandy. The deception worked because Garcia's network appeared too elaborate to be controlled, too consistent to be fabricated, too mathematically precise to be wrong. The recognition came swiftly. On July 1st, 1944, Garcia received a message from Berlin via the Madrid radio station. The message, signed by Oberst Krummacher, conveyed Hitler's personal congratulations for intelligence services to the Reich and announced that the Führer had approved awarding Garcia the Iron Cross First Class. The medal would be held in Madrid for security reasons. Garcia could not risk collecting it while operating undercover in Britain. But the award itself was recorded in Wehrmacht records, making Garcia one of the few non-Germans to receive this honor during the war. MI5 and Garcia celebrated this differently. The Iron Cross proved the deception had succeeded completely. Germany trusted him absolutely. But they also recognized operational risk. As Allied forces advanced through France, as German intelligence networks in occupied Europe collapsed, as the Abwehr itself was dissolved and absorbed into the SD in late 1944, Garcia's operation faced potential exposure. Captured German officers might reveal Alarich's identity under interrogation. German records might fall into Soviet hands. The British needed exit strategy. The solution emerged through fictional personal crisis. In late 1944, Garcia began sending letters indicating personal problems. His wife was ill, his business was failing, his sub-agents were becoming difficult to control. He requested extended leave, suggested that operational tempo was exhausting him, hinted that he might need to cease operations temporarily. The Germans urged him to continue, offered additional money, praised his exceptional service. Garcia insisted. By February 1945, he informed his handlers that he was closing his network temporarily, relocating to Canada for personal reasons, and would resume operations when circumstances improved. The Germans accepted this reluctantly. The war in Europe ended May 8, 1945. Garcia's operation had run for 3 years and 3 months of active deception under British control, preceded by 14 months of freelance deception from Spain. In that time, he had composed 315 letters containing intelligence reports, created 27 entirely fictional agents, convinced Germany to hold the 15th Army at Pas-de-Calais during the critical weeks after D-Day, and received the Iron Cross from Hitler personally. German intelligence never suspected that Alaric was a double agent. They never questioned the network. They never realized that every word in 1,500 pages of intelligence reports was invented by a Spanish chicken farmer and an art dealer working from a house in suburban London. The post-war recognition came slowly. Garcia's role was classified. He could not discuss it publicly, could not claim credit, existed in bureaucratic secrecy. The British awarded him the MBE, Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, in a private ceremony in 1945. The citation was classified. The medal itself carried no explanation. Garcia was one of extraordinarily few people to receive military decorations from both sides during the same conflict. He emigrated to Venezuela in 1949, adopted a new identity, and disappeared from public knowledge. MI5 officially informed historians and researchers that Agent GARBO had died in 1959 in Angola. The lie was intentional, designed to protect Garcia from potential German reprisal, even years after the war ended. He lived quietly in Venezuela, managing a bookshop, raising his children, maintaining absolute silence about his wartime service. The story emerged in 1984, when writer Nigel West tracked Garcia to Venezuela while researching a book about MI5 operations. Garcia was then 72 years old, living in Caracas, still maintaining his cover identity. West convinced him to break silence. Garcia returned to London, met with surviving members of MI5 who had worked with him, was honoured at a ceremony recognising his contribution. British press covered the story extensively. The man who had deceived Hitler, convinced Germany that Normandy was a diversion, potentially saved thousands of Allied lives, had been operating a bookshop in South America for 35 years. The operational analysis of Garcia's success revealed several critical factors that transcended individual brilliance. First was institutional receptiveness. The Abwehr needed intelligence from Britain. After their agent networks collapsed in 1940 to 1941, they were desperate for any source providing information from inside England. Garcia appeared exactly when German intelligence most needed him. Desperation made them credulous. Second was operational complexity, creating credibility. A single agent reporting impossible information would have been dismissed. Garcia created 27 agents, each with distinct personalities, access limitations, and reporting patterns. The network appeared too elaborate to be fabricated. The Germans believed it was real because inventing it seemed more difficult than actually recruiting it. Third was financial authentication. Garcia accepted payment, negotiated rates, distributed money to fictional sub-agents. The financial dimension suggested genuine espionage rather than controlled deception. Why would British intelligence pay Garcia to accept German money if they controlled him? The logic seemed absurd. Therefore, the Germans concluded he must be genuine. Fourth was mathematical precision. Garcia's reports included exact numbers, unit strengths, equipment quantities, geographical coordinates, dates. This specificity suggested real observation rather than invented intelligence. The statistics seemed too detailed to fabricate. German analysts did not consider that someone might invent precise numbers, specifically because precision created credibility. Fifth was confirmation bias. Hitler believed Pas-de-Calais was the primary target. German strategic doctrine held that Pas-de-Calais was the logical objective. Garcia's intelligence confirmed what German command already believed. They accepted it because it matched their pre-existing assumptions. Deception succeeds most completely when it tells the target what they already want to believe. The historical counterfactual is significant. If Germany had committed the 15th Army to Normandy immediately after D-Day, Allied casualties would have been substantially higher. The beachhead might have been contained. The additional 19 divisions deployed during June 6th to 15th, when Allied positions were most vulnerable, could have created conditions where the invasion stalled. Historians estimate Garcia's deception potentially saved between 15,000 and 40,000 Allied casualties by keeping German reserves away from Normandy during the critical first 2 weeks. But Garcia's contribution extended beyond tactical impact. His operation demonstrated that systemic deception could be more effective than military force in achieving strategic objectives. One man, writing letters from a suburban house, created operational conditions that entire armoured divisions could not have produced through combat. The intelligence dimension of warfare proved as significant as industrial production, technological innovation, or battlefield courage. The modern intelligence community studied GARBO's operation extensively. The lessons shaped post-war doctrine in counterintelligence, double-agent operations, and strategic deception. The critical insight was that deception succeeds through systematic construction of false realities that match target expectations rather than through simple lies. Effective deception requires understanding what the enemy believes, creating evidence that confirms those beliefs, and allowing the enemy to reach false conclusions that seem to emerge from their own analysis. Garcia himself remained modest about his achievement. In interviews during the 1980s, he described his work as collaborative effort with Thomas Harris, emphasized the contributions of MI5 technical staff who handled secure communications, and noted that he was merely one element of the broader fortitude deception. He refused to claim personal credit for D-Day's success, noting correctly that thousands of people contributed to Allied victory through logistics, intelligence, combat operations, and strategic planning. But the statistical record is clear. Germany paid Garcia $340,000 between 1941 and 1945 for intelligence services. Every dollar they paid him funded deception that worked against German strategic interests. Germany awarded him the Iron Cross for preventing Allied invasion success at Pas-de-Calais, an invasion that never existed. They held the 15th Army in position based on his intelligence for 6 weeks after D-Day, during which Allied forces established irreversible superiority in Normandy. And they never questioned whether their most productive agent in Britain might be controlled by British intelligence. Garcia lived until October 10, 1988, dying in Venezuela at age 76. His obituaries in British newspapers described him as the greatest double agent of the Second World War, a man whose imagination proved more powerful than panzer divisions, whose typewriter inflicted more damage on German war effort than strategic bombing. The Spanish chicken farmer, who nobody wanted, who was rejected by British intelligence 3 times, who began his intelligence career by inventing reports from guidebooks in a Madrid apartment, had become the person who convinced Hitler that an invasion force that did not exist was preparing to attack a location that would never be invaded. The memorial service at the Guards Chapel in London drew surviving members of the deception operation. They remembered Garcia not as a heroic spy conducting dangerous missions, but as a meticulous craftsman who spent years writing letters by hand, maintaining consistent character voices for 27 fictional people, and ensuring that every detail in 1,500 pages of correspondence, was consistent with every other detail. The espionage was administrative rather than dramatic. The weapon was imagination disciplined by obsessive attention to plausibility. In the chapel, an MI5 officer who had worked with Garcia during the war delivered the eulogy. He noted that intelligence work is typically invisible, that the most successful operations leave no trace, that the people who prevent wars or save lives through information rarely receive recognition. Garcia was exceptional not because his work was invisible, it eventually became known, but because his success depended on enemies believing something completely false with absolute confidence. Germany trusted him more than they trusted their own strategic doctrine. They awarded him their nation's highest military honor for intelligence that led to their defeat. And after the war, when Garcia could have become wealthy through memoirs, interviews, and consulting, he chose obscurity, running a bookshop in Caracas, maintaining silence for 39 years because his handlers asked him to protect sources and methods. The officer concluded with a simple observation. Statues commemorate generals who led armies, memorials honor soldiers who fought battles. But victory in modern warfare often depends on people like Garcia, whose contribution was making the enemy believe something false at the exact moment when that false belief determined strategic outcomes. He invented 27 people who never existed. Germany believed all 27, and that belief changed the course of history.